She was born in a village where the earth smelled of dust and rain, where children ran barefoot across fields, and where dreams were often crushed beneath the weight of poverty. Her childhood was not filled with toys or festivals, but with chores and silence. Her mother's hands were always cracked from working the fields, her father's shoulders bent under debts that never seemed to vanish. She learned early that life was not fair, that some children were born into lullabies while others were born into hunger. At night, she would sit by the clay stove, watching the flames dance, whispering to herself, "One day, I will change this. One day, I will give my mother peace." But the world had other plans. Amma's lips trembled as she spoke these words, her voice sinking with the narrator's sorrow. The lamp behind her glowed warmer, as if trying to soften the cruelty of memory. Her marriage came too soon, like a storm that arrives before the sky has time to prepare. She was handed over to a household where expectations were heavy and kindness was scarce. Her husband was a man of few words, but his silence was not gentle. It was sharp, cutting through her spirit. She cooked, cleaned, and served, but her efforts were rarely acknowledged. Instead, she was reminded of her duty, her place, her limitations. The house was larger than her childhood home, but it felt smaller, suffocating. Every corner echoed with demands. Every room carried the weight of judgment. She bore children, and with each birth her body weakened, but her resolve grew stronger. She whispered to herself again, "I must endure. For them, I must endure." Amma's lips moved with the narrator's words, her eyes reflecting the pain of generations. The lamp flickered, casting long shadows across the veranda, as though the walls themselves remembered her suffering. The narrator's voice grew heavier, and Amma's lips slowed, almost trembling. But what happens when endurance is no longer enough? What happens when sacrifice turns into silence, and silence becomes a prison? The lamp dimmed for a moment, as if holding its breath. The story was only beginning, and the deepest wounds were yet to be revealed. Her days blurred into nights, and her nights into endless chores. She became the silent backbone of the household, the one who held everything together while her own spirit quietly unraveled. She sold her jewelry to pay for medicine when her child fell ill. She skipped meals so her family could eat. She endured harsh words without reply, swallowing her pain like bitter tea. Neighbors admired her strength, but they never saw the cracks beneath her smile. She was a woman who gave everything, yet received little in return. Her sacrifices were invisible, like the air that keeps a flame alive, but is never seen. Amma's lips moved with the narrator's words, her eyes shimmering with empathy. The lamp behind her glowed brighter, as if honoring the quiet heroism of a forgotten woman. It was a winter evening when the storm arrived, not of rain, but of fate. Her husband lost his job, debts piled up, and the house became a battlefield of despair. She tried to hold the family together, but the weight was crushing. One night she overheard her children whispering, "Why does mother always cry when she thinks we're asleep?" That moment shattered her. She realized her silence had become a prison, not only for herself, but for those she loved. She could no longer hide behind endurance. She stood in the veranda, staring at the lamp's fragile flame, and whispered, "If I break, they will break too. I must rise, even if it costs me everything." Amma's lips trembled as she spoke these words, her voice sinking with the narrator's pain. The lamp flickered violently, as though the universe itself was listening. The narrator's tone deepened, and Amma's lips slowed, heavy with meaning. But rising is never simple. When a woman decides to fight back against fate, the world does not applaud, it resists. And what followed was not relief, but a storm far greater than she had ever imagined. The lamp dimmed, casting long shadows across the veranda. The story was about to enter its darkest chapter. The house grew colder, not from the weather, but from the weight of despair. Her husband's failures became her burden, and her children's needs became her battlefield. She cried at night, muffling her sobs into the pillow so no one would hear. but silence cannot hide grief forever. Her children saw the redness in her eyes, the trembling in her hands, the way her smile cracked like broken glass. One evening she sat alone in the veranda, staring at the lamp's fragile flame. She whispered, "I have given everything, yet the world keeps asking for more. How much more can I give before I disappear?" Amma's lips moved with the narrator's words, her eyes shimmering with empathy. The lamp flickered, casting shadows that looked like ghosts of her past.